So we've talked about linked lists, we've talked about stacks, we've talked about queues. Those are all great if you're tracking only one set of values. You know, you have a series of strings, you have a series of numbers, or you have a series of objects. But what if you wanted to associate objects with values so that you could look them up very quickly? So that you could say, okay, give me the information for Joe, and then it'll print the entire object for Joe. What these maps do is they map two values to each other. Both of these are going to be objects, actually. So you have a key, and then you have a value. So a map relates an object in a key set to another object that could be in another set, a list or a queue. A map is like a mathematical function. You provide an independent key and it returns an independent value. So you have a put. You can put something into your map. And once we actually demonstrate this, it's going to be real clear. Far clearer than just reading about it. But we're going to put a value in, we're going to put a key in, and then if we ever want to look it up, we look it up by its key. And you Python scripting users saw us use maps. So I know that some of y'all have used maps. And then to remove and return a value, you can remove that key. Now, broadly speaking, the kinds of maps that I teach are sorted map and hash map. And the reason I do those is because the syntax, I'm lazy, and the syntax for both of these is exactly the same. The difference is that a sorted map maintains its order, sorted by the keys. So, you know, if you add an A and then you add a B and then you add a C as your keys, then when you retrieve them using a for each loop, then they come out A, B, and C. Whereas a hash map does not have any sorted order at all. And why might you want to do that? Well, inserts into it are a little bit faster since it's not bothering to have to iterate through it to sort it appropriately to get to the right value. And it could be that what you are inserting, it doesn't really make sense to think that it's sorted. You know, if you have numbers or strings, yeah, those kind of make sense to sort them. But you know, if you have a series of rats and you're mapping those rats to a series of diseases, then it doesn't make much sense to try to sort the rats. What are you going to sort them on? Their name, their breed, their age, whatever. So you don't want to have to write a compare to method for every class you do just so that you can always insert them into a sorted map. Sometimes you don't care if the data is sorted. So let's go ahead and make, like I said, this is going to make a lot more sense once we actually try it out. Make our new Java app. Remove our package statement. By the way, if you do this, file, new project, next, you see here this first part of this create main class thing is the package declaration. You could just delete that there, and then when it creates the class, it doesn't have the package keyword in it. So you could delete everything up to the period. And then it's already in the right, you know, it has no package statement. And that was awfully tiny print, so I don't even know if you could see it. All right. Oh, you. All right. Did not mean to launch Visual Studio. Go away. Come back to here. So I'm going to create a sorted map. All of these are, again, in the same package as the array list. So I could probably get away with just adding import java.util.star. Hopefully that brings it in. So, sorted map. And what we're going to do is map names to ages. didn't come up with a better map. I'm just going to call this NA map is equal to new sorted map like that. I'm pretty sure I've already garbled the syntax there. Should have made this a tree map. What it's complaining about is sorted map is not a, it's an abstract class, meaning that you can't actually create an object of sorted map. But we can use it to reference the tree map class based on the inheritance hierarchy. So we're going to change this to tree map. All right, now we have a sorted map with no data. So let's see. We're going to do it the dumb way first. No, we're not. NA map dot put. We're going to put a name in there and their age. Same rules apply for this in this language as for array lists. These have to be classes, so you can't use primitive data types. However, if you use a wrapper class, then it'll package and unpackage the data cleanly. Let's put a few more ages in. Sue is 29. NA map dot put Sally is 31. Now let's get some values out of it. Int age 1 is equal to NA map dot get, and we specify the key. I want to know Sue's age. System.out.print line. Sue's age is, comma, age 1. Oh, excuse me, plus age 1. You know, my brain twisted between two programming languages. If I'd used printf, I could have used a comma there as long as I had a placeholder there. All right, this is going to work beautifully. It's going to tell me that Sue is 29 when I run it. And Sue's age is in fact 29. Let's get Bob's age out. System.out.println Bob's age is, and I'm going to put a space after it, which I should have done on the other one, plus namap.get for Bob. Like that. Alrighty, so Bob's age was really 30. Sue's age really was 29. And if we did the same for Sally, if we did namap.getSally, then the tree map would return, excuse me, yeah, it's a tree map, but the sorted map would return a 31. So that's actually pretty cool, because you could store a whole bunch of information and then give it an easy to access key. Key in on their name. Names aren't unique really, so key in on their, you know, their student ID, that kind of thing. And then you could pull up their data from the list based on the student ID. I called it a list, that's bad, from the map. Now let's go ahead and print our map out using our classic for each. Nope, that's not actually how you do it. We could try it, but then what is the element going to be? That's not going to work. So instead of doing for int x is equal to, you know, or int x colon inside the tree map, you know, or whatever, the sorted map, what these are these are actually map elements. Each one is a new map element. There's a map element class. So what we're going to do is we're going to say for every map element MEL map element in our NA map, That's going to fill it in turn, right? Cannot find symbol. I done goofed. Map entry, excuse me, map entry. All right, so it's map entry, and I'll provide a link to where I just nabbed that code from. That was a Stack Overflow question, which of course, just like every Stack Overflow question, the first comment is this has been asked elsewhere. But so here we go. Just put that in as a comment. You don't have to. I'm not going to post this code most likely. Maybe I will. Cannot find symbol. Oh, come on, don't make me work. Don't make me. All right, excuse me, it's map.entry. For every map.entry temporary variable name in our map, now we have a map.entry. It's got a couple of methods. It's got getKey. I'm going to erase that, or I'm going to make something useful out of it in a minute. And then it's got mapEntry.getValue. So you see what we can do with these? It's getting the key and it's getting the value for each one. So let's just declare two variables, tAge for temp age, string nAge for name, excuse me, temporary name, tname. Now let's get those out. Which one is the key and which one is the value? How did we declare it up here? Which one was the key? The first one. So we need to get the string. So tname is equal to mel.getKey. Now we have the user's name. I'm getting an error because I have to cast it. Why? Because these things are just stored as object references. These are templates. We could do a test to make sure that what we're looking at is actually, of that type. And then tAge is equal to, it's an int, but it's stored as an integer, right? Because everything is stored as a wrapper in these things. Mel.getValue.
We're still getting an error for our 4. If you go back and look at it, I think there's more code to that line.
Dot entry set. Okay, yeah, I botched this. This syntax is not nearly as clean as just using a for each loop, but it's a lot better than. So, for every map.entry, mel colon in na map.entry set, like that. All right, that's our final answer. That's good. And now that we have their age and their name, we can print them out. System.out.print f name equals %20s, age equals %d/n, followed by their tname, comma, tAge, semicolon. How many times do you actually need to iterate through the entire map, printing all the values out? You'll probably only do that during debugging. Oh, I won't say that. But anyways, a little bit more complicated syntax, but the concept is exactly the same. The map is considered a collection of map.entries. If you want to pull that collection in so that you can play with it, you call .entrySet method. And so you can write your for loop for map.entry, whatever is equal to map.entrySet, whatever the name of your map is. And let's run it. And then we're going to blow up our code. We're going to add some code that causes an exception. All right, and so it did print it out. Bob, Sally, and Sue. Notice those are, in fact, in alphabetical order. If we change this from a tree map to a hash map, these would no longer be in any particular order. They are in some order that, is dependent upon the order in which you insert them, but it doesn't even necessarily match that. let's just do that. Let's change sorted map to a hash map. And that didn't work, so I'm going to go back and look at my PowerPoint. I see hash map right there.
The syntax just looks weird. If you click on the,
Fooey. All right, we're going to revise this. So a hash map is not descended from tree map. It's a different kind of map. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to hash map string integer in a map is equal to new hash map empty angle braces. Then when we run it, it may be in the same order, but it may not be. Nope. Sue is first, Bob is next, and Sally is next. So how would you emulate this code using a linked list? It wouldn't be terribly easy. I mean, yeah, you could do it pretty easily, but it would not be terribly performance friendly. And by that I mean you could create an object, right, that had both strings and integers, and then you could make a function, a method that would iterate through your entire list looking for a name match and then return, that object. But you're writing the iteration code, in order to do that, in order to pull out the specific object that matches the key that you want. And there's already a class designed for that. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Let's do something a little bit more interesting.
Is that, so are these kind of like dictionaries, I guess?
Yeah, these are the same thing as dictionaries in Python. Right.
It's been so long since I've actually had a Python.
So what we're going to do is let's make a little class, student data, S data, and it's got in it a student's name, the student's age, and I'm going to go ahead and make it in wrapper. And then we are going to insert things. And heck,
Should I tell you to move it to actually a class, or?
I should move this into its own class. I'm defining a class within a class, which is incredibly poor programming. But I'm going to leave it here for now. Okay, so
It's for the sake of the election.
so yes, I should move this into its own class, file name sdata. And then a string or an integer of student ID. Let's use an integer for the student ID. Now let's write a little loop to ask for those three pieces of information and then adds it to a hash map or tree map so that we can then retrieve it easily. Now we're actually going to wind up using integer as our key as well, but that's okay. So we're going to kind of do just a little bit of duplicate information.
Can you do prototypes for classes?
You don't have prototypes of classes. The class definition is the prototype.
So even if you define it under main, it'll still...
Well, if I went into some other code, this class definition here is only valid within main.
Okay.
Kind of like a local variable.
Okay. It's a local class.
Yeah, it's a local class definition. You can even define anonymous classes that have no names at all, but nah. Okay, so let's just do a while true loop.
Since you're doing this under the main...
System.out.println, enter, student ID.
Oh.
Let's read that in. Int I don't know why I called it IID. I actually meant to make it SID, but that makes it look like a string. So I'm going to call it IID, even though it looks silly. IID is equal to, you know, we don't have a scanner yet. It always SA.nextInt. And let's make it one of those that says enter student ID or -1 to quit or to break. We need our scanner, so I'm going to come up here and create our scanner. Scanner SC is equal to new scanner system.in. And then down here, after we ask for the value, so system.out.println enter student ID or -1 to break. And then int ID is equal to sc.nextInt. If it was equal to -1, then break, or if it's less than 0. If IID less than 0, break. All right, now we have their ID. Let's get their name and their age.
Shouldn't we? No, never mind.
I want to use getLine all the way throughout this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So, pardon me, I'm going to revise this a little bit. I need a temporary string to read this stuff into. Just S will do. So S is equal to sc.nextInt. Parentheses in parentheses, and then parse it. Excuse me, next line. So S is equal to sc.nextLine, then parse it. Int ID is equal to integer.parse int the string. And yes, that would blow up. We needed some exception handling to prevent that. All right, good enough. We have our integer. Now let's ask for their name. System.out.println student name question mark. And let's read it in. String S is equal to sc.nextLine. And then let's just store that in our name variable. I'm regretting doing this the way that I've done it. String name is equal to S. Oh, I've already declared S. I'm just going to revise this to be name is equal to sc.nextLine and ignore the temporary variable entirely. So println student name question mark, and then string name is equal to sc.nextLine, and we need to get their age. That's going to require the temporary variable. So system.out.println student age. And what we should do is we should put this in a method that returns a student object, so that we can just call get student info, you know. But anyways, now let's read that in. S is equal to sc.nextLine. Convert it. Int age is equal to S is equal to integer dot parse int, passing in our string. All right, now we have 3 pieces of data. Let's create our object. Pretty primitive object, no getters, no setters, no constructors. It'll work. So, sData, scroll up here, remind myself the name of it. Yeah, sData student is equal to new sData. Then start filling in student. Students.name is equal to the name. Students.age is equal to the age that we just read in. And student.iid is equal to the ID that we just read in. Now we have all that information. We're going to add it to our map. We haven't created our map yet, so I'm going to scroll up and do it in the same place that I just created my scanner. So, sorted map, and our key is going to be our student ID, which is an int, so integer, comma, sData. is equal to new tree map, angle braces, parentheses, semicolon. Dadgumbit. Alright, that was dumb. I forgot to give it a name. I'm going to call this data map. Now, an end user never wanted to hear the word map, but it makes sense to us. Okay, so we have our scanner, we have our data map, which is a sorted map of type integer S data, and then we have the name of our map. Data map is equal to new tree map. Go back to the bottom of our loop, while true, and do this. We have a student, add it to our data map. Data map dot put. Oh, I promised that I was going to crash our program. Well, we'll do that in a minute. And we want to add by the student ID and then the student that we just created. So add this student object to the map. And we're going to keep doing this until they enter a -1. Now what I regret doing is I should have just created the object to begin with and not use all these temporary variables. But I think that's okay. I'm going to put a comment right above here, which is, now that we have our data, create a S data object for that student. Then we have our 4 lines there, and then add this student to the map. Add this student to the map. All right, I better pause, make sure that everybody here is going okay. So I'm going to run it. Now this doesn't give us any output, so I'm not going to take a lot of time to type in good data. Build and clean it, run it. Here we go, enter student ID. I'm just going to add 1 student. His ID is 123. His name is Bob Bobertson, and his age is 23. Then I'm going to type in -1. It didn't crash. I'm happy enough at this point. Now what I normally do at this point is write a loop to print this stuff out. If we had added a toString method to our SData class, I'd be tempted to do that, but I'm just going to skip printing the loop. You know how to do it based on this for loop up here. For every map entry, you know what? We ought to do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so here we go. We've got all of our data. So for every map dot entry, come on. Notice it's saying entry, and then it's displaying our template here of key and value. And then MEL, map element, in our data map dot entry set. So every map dot entry MEL colon data map period entry set, parentheses in parentheses in parentheses. We have a student at this point, and we can just print his information out, or hers. System.out.printf %10s for their name. Now let's print their ID first. %10d for the student ID. %20s for their name. %10i. Oh, that's way too much for an integer, right? I mean, an age. %3d for their age. And then on the next line, I'm going to do MEL dot. I have to cast it first, excuse me. So student, or SData, SD is equal to, and we have to cast it, SData version of MEL look up higher. Cannot find symbol. I put a semicolon at the end of my for loop. The most lame mistake I could have made. Okay. Take the semicolon off the for loop if you had it there.
Since we have a hash, or not hash, but tree map, or sorted map, with a key and value, where would the age come into play? How would you print?
Well, the age, yeah, the question is we have a key, which is a student name, the student ID. Where's the age going to, the age is just part of the data, along with the name. The entire thing stored is an entire S-data object, so we're going to tuck away their name, their age, and their student ID.
So that's what the cast is for.
And that's what the cast is for, okay. Right. So then we print out SD, okay, system.out.printf, %10d, %20s, %3d, SD dot student ID, IID, comma, student, SD dot their name, comma, SD their age. And I forgot to put a slash in, so maybe I'll just stick it here, system.out.println. And I should probably go in and say ID equals %10d, name equals %20s, age equals %3d. And I should probably put minus signs in front of them so that they would all be left justified. So ID equals % minus 10d, name is equal to % minus 20s, age is equal to % minus 3d. We're just making this in a nice columned table.
Since there's not that was one of the other questions I was going to message you. Whenever you want to right align something or left align it, and you don't know how long it is.
Yeah.
How would you just right align or left align it? Well, alright, we're still recording, aren't we?
I'll pause it.
Sorry, it's a.
So I've made a grievous error. Why don't y'all scroll back up to the prior for loop and tell me what I did wrong.
The prior for loop?
Yeah, because we printed our other list, our other map with a for loop as well.
Map.entry.
The for statement is correct, but then I did something wrong next. What was the very top line of the for loop?
Honestly, I think ours are probably different.
I'll scroll up and look.
Because what I did.
Here's what I did wrong, is I didn't get the key and get the value. Instead, I tried to convert to cast a map entry directly, and there's no way I could do that.
Okay.
So I have to get the key and the get value, or at least get the value out. So now down here, instead of saying sdata sd is equal to sdata mel, I got to say mel dot get value. And I don't really care about the key at this point. Why? Because the key is also one of the fields. I could get the key and print it as well just to prove that it matches the student ID. But I made the student ID both a field in the class and the key to the database, so I can get it from either one in order to print it out. Let me test that. Let me test where we are so far. And I think I can remove that. I've made a terrible mistake. Alrighty.
And then you gotta click on that.
So student ID 123, Bob, age 23. Student ID 456, student name, Sue, her age is 41. Now we're tired, so we're going to hit -1, and it prints it out. ID is 123, name Bob, age 23. ID is 456, name Sue, age 41. And I hope you'll agree with me that doing this with an array list would take more programming. Certainly not impossible to do. You'd have to search through the array list element by element until you found one that matched the student ID.
So get value returns. Okay, we have I just want to make sure I got this correct. We have a sorted map of students, right?
Right, we have a sorted map of integers and of SData objects.
Okay, so get value returns an SData.
Right, it returns an SData object.
So that's why we can do SData, that casting that we did.
Right.
So why would you have to cast it if the value is already a...
Because underneath it all, yeah, why did we have to cast it? Because underneath it all, it is just stored as an object reference. And then later on, you have to cast it to what type it is.
Get value does, I mean, just so you can use it with any object, that's why it just returns an object.
Right,
instead of return.
because they couldn't write a prototype of get value that'll magically return your class as opposed to somebody else. If you remember, a prototype can have differing numbers or differing types of parameters, but you can't write one prototype, one function, one method that'll declare different data types. And if it's going to do that, you better cast it. Now what we probably ought to do is to make sure that the object we got out of it is actually an SData object. So we want to use the instance of keyword if we were going to do this. We have a mel if mel dot or instance of SData, then we want to do the rest of this. Is it particularly necessary in this case? No, I don't think so, and I think I've botched the syntax. A instance of X. I put parentheses into it like it was a function, but it's just a keyword. So mel instance of SData, like that.
Lowercase.
Yeah. All right, instance of is all lowercase. No camel case on their keywords. If it had been a method, they would have camel cased it. All right. And then we could print out a cute little error message saying that it was the unexpected type. Is that strictly necessary? No. In this particular case, I don't think it is, because I don't think we could get away with inserting something of the wrong type. I think the compiler would catch it. I'm going to test that theory, but I'm not going to actually run it. So if I did datamap.put and I put ID comma and I just passed in a string, templates are going to guarantee that I'm actually inserting something of the correct type, incompatible types. But it's not a bad idea. When you pull an object out of something and before you cast it, it's just safe programming to check to make sure it's of the right type before you use it. I don't know if that made the example any more difficult to understand than it already was. Hopefully not. All right. Now the last thing I wanted to do, well, 2, 3 more things, is write a loop that will let the user type in a student ID, and we're going to print out the object that relates to that student ID, and then we're going to test that entering a bad value, which we never have done. In fact, why don't we just go prove that to ourselves up here? What happens if we try to get a key that does not exist? Does it just return a null? Does it do something horrible? It's going to do something horrible. Way up here, where we did in a map get Sue after we added Bob, Sue, and Sally, change Sue into something that's not in your list. We know Fred's not in the list. Compiler doesn't know that, so it doesn't care. But when we run it, boom, it blows up. Null pointer exception. We get a null pointer exception. We don't get a return value out of that. It's not something that gives us a return value. It'd be kind of neat if it did, but, well, actually I guess it does. But what it does is it throws an exception. But you can check the map to make sure that that value is there before you start playing with it, before you actually try to get it. We'll do that down at the bottom. I'm going to change that back to Sue so it will compile. Then we're going to go and write another for loop. Excuse me, a while loop. While true, string s for our temporary, system.out.println, get data for what student ID. Question mark, semicolon, parentheses. Yeah, wrong order. Parentheses, semicolon. All right, read that in. S is equal to sc dot next line. Parse it. Int I ID is equal to. That was a really dumb variable choice name for me. But anyways, IID is equal to integer dot parse int the string that we just read. Now we have a student ID. Get our object. So from our tree map, s data is equal to, and then let's cast it, s data. What is the name of our map? I believe it was data map. Yes, it was. So data map.get, specifying that ID we just got. Now we have a student. We could print it out. Same kind of information. I'm not going to make it as complex as we did last time. Okay. System.out.print line data.name plus a space plus data.iid plus a space plus data.age. And I forgot to do the get data for what student ID or -1 to exit. I'm going to make that modification right now. Get data for what student ID or -1 to break. And then once I convert it, after the parsing, if ID is less than 0, break. Alright, two folks have run it and got that. It's printing out nulls. I need to test mine again. So enter student ID 123, Bob, who's 30, 456, who's Sue, and she's 40, 41. -1 to break. It didn't print out any data at all. I swear I saw it work earlier. Okay, but my for loop worked. I mean, my while loop worked. I was able to get the data for Bob by typing in his student ID. Now type in 456, that is Sue's student ID. So what have I done? here was my take that for if mel instance of S data out. I'm going to need to rethink that more carefully. Another way to do it would just be to do the cast and then use exception handling to capture any problems of it. Once more with feeling. 1, 2, 3. Student name, Bob, 30. 4, 5, 6. Student name, Sue, 40. Still didn't print it. All right, help me out, guys. Did I ever? I mean, I thought I demoed this. I thought I ran it and actually got some output from it.
I know we ran it before
the
we
instance of.
Yeah, we ran it before we changed the. Let me see. We cast S data and the get value. Does that need to be get key?
No, I'm using. I could get the key out, but the key just got the student ID.
Oh.
So I want the entire value. It's like there's no data here. It's like it's saying it's an empty, that data map is empty. But we've been putting it into the map the whole time. So just for grins, I'm going to stick a system.out.println line and print out MEL. It's just going to print an address, but I want to see that it gets something. And I'm going to put a print line up here, system.out.println printing map. And then underneath all of this, after the for loop, system.out. I need to stretch this so that I get all the code on the screen at one time.
Yeah, after I take the instance of stuff out, it prints it just fine.
Okay, okay. So it worked for you when we removed the instance of. And then query map. That's what I'm just going to call this section. Maybe I didn't recompile it. Maybe I didn't rebuild it. Run it once more. Student ID, 1, 2, 3. Bob, 30. Student ID, 4, 5, 6. Sue, 40. -1 to break. Okay, and the for loop is working now. It's printing out the address and the class name, you know, but that's okay with me.
Mine's.
And then negative. Okay, so get it for 1, 2, get the data for student ID 1, 2, 3, prints out Bob. Get the student information for ID 4, 5, 6, prints out Sue, -1. Okay, so some folk here have it working, some not. Let me pause the recording.
Yeah, I'm still getting no.
So I need to remove this print statement right here because I don't want to just print the object out. I want to get the data out and print it nicely. So that's that. That's the for loop. Pause if you need to examine it. And then here's the query map loop.
I think I need to do something real quick.
So while true, get student ID for what data, next line, parse int, IID less than 0, break. Now we have a student object, so use data map dot get. Now that we've got our value, it's an SData object. We need to cast it to SData, store it into a new SData reference, and we can print it out. All right, so our problem is that if they enter bad student ID, we're going to get an exception. It's going to blow up our code. And yeah, if we'd covered exception handling this semester so far, we have not. We could just put that in a try-catch, but a much kinder way to do it is to make sure that the key exists. So the name of our map, is data map. I'm just going to type data map dot, and we're going to look at the list of methods. Here's one, contains key, Boolean. You can check to make sure it has that key. Or contains value, which is kind of an odd idea, right? But you know, if the value is not already in the list, you might want to add it to the list. That's what you could add. You know, that's what you could do with that. So, in order to do this, here's where we try to get it. Here's where we try to get our object. We want to validate that that object exists first. So at the bottom of our while loop, we need to do this. If data map dot contains key IID, then do these other cool things. Else print an error message. Else system.out.println that student ID does not exist.
Does the book even go over trying to catch?
Yeah, the book does cover exception handling. Not early enough. And we skipped a chapter while doing this. We skipped chapter 8. Not sure why now. Anyways, okay. So running it, gonna do the same test. Student ID is 123. Bob, who's 30. Student ID 456. Sam is 50. -1 to break out of that loop. Now we're going to query the map, get data for what student ID. Let's first always test if it's successful, and then we're going to try to break it. 123 is in fact Bob, but what about 789? That student ID does not exist. And trust me, we would have gotten an exception error if we had not added this data map.contains key line. Alrighty. I think I better upload this code as, you know, valid code, as good code to work from. Doesn't mean I just want people to copy and paste it and upload it without reading the assignment, but it's good code. So looking once more at what we've covered, we have talked about how to declare a hash map or a sorted map. Guess we could type up some itty-bitty notes. Key type, value type is equal to new hash map. Now to add, whoops, forgot the name of it, map name. Now we can insert into it map name dot put something, put in a key, put in a value. Do another one, map name dot put key and a value. Now we're ready to get something out of it. Value is equal to map name dot get based on that key. That's not safe, so make sure the map contains the key before you call .get. So if map name dot get key is equal to true, and we all know that that is superfluous, then get it out. Value is equal to map name dot get based on that key. Alrighty. That was a hash map. So the sorted map, key type, you know, K type, value type, I'm just going to call that tree name, is equal to new. Underneath it all, they're both trees. But anyways, I think new tree map. The same operations exist for both of these.
For your if statement right there, is that supposed to be checking if the key exists?
Exactly, I goofed that one up. If map name dot contains key. Thank you for noticing that. That's how you check to see if is key contained in the map. So hash map does not contain or is not maintained as sorted. Hash map not maintained in a sorted fashion. Sorted map is maintained as sorted, meaning if you used a for loop to print through them all, sorted map would be sorted by the key. I guess I should add hash map is not maintained as sorted in key order. Sorted map is maintained as sorted in key order. Now for this funky syntax of iterating through one of these loops, for map.element mel in your map dot, is it entries or elements? I believe it was elements. Entry set. Alrighty. Entry map dot entry set parentheses in parentheses another parentheses, get the value. So value type new object, you know, is equal to cast it as your value type, mel.getValue, and then do something with that data. Now the type can be, both types have to be reference types, so they both have to be classes. They can be primitive data types, or they can be types that you create. I think that's about enough, and if I prepared this cheat sheet before the lecture, it would have gone a lot more smoothly. So apologies guys, but I don't think I'm going to re-record it. Alrighty, so homework based on this idea. We seem to like vets and animals and things like that. So, did we not have a vet class that we've already created with the name of the dog and the breed?
Yeah, that was like 6.
Yeah, we've done that.
Alright, anyways, so create a animal class with a name, breed, age, and whether it's vaccinated. And I don't care if you just reuse your class from an earlier time. I think it has pretty much that information.
Yeah, that's it.
Then write an application that will let the user enter a series of animals, collecting the data to create a new animal object. Add that object to a map. I'd use a sorted so that it would be maintained sorted. Print the map out with a for loop. have a query loop. Oh, and there's one thing we didn't use, which is that you can remove items from the map, right? Just like you can remove things from an array list. You don't want student ID 123 in there anymore. You could remove that based on that key. So have a query loop that asks the user for the animal name and prints out the information for that animal. So your key will be the name. Your value will be an animal object. That makes sense? It's way too close to what we already just created, but that's okay.
Animal class for name.
All right, guys, that's it for this one. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that the record actually has its vocals and everything. Let's find out when I press